Hello again, and welcome back to the Game Dev Show. I'm here with Johnny from Turbo Makes Games to talk about some game development news that's going on and some CES stuff as well. Johnny just attended, and we got, I think, a couple interesting topics. I've got a story I want to share that's kind of in the title here, and yeah, I just want to say thanks to everybody for coming out here, and welcome, and please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and share the stream. Get all your friends out here. Before we get started, and before I forget, we are still looking for a few speakers for GameDev Guild 2023. I believe Johnny is going to be doing a presentation there. Last year he did an amazing one, so really excited to have him come back and do another. And we've got quite a few speakers lined up with some really interesting topics, but I'm still looking for a couple people to talk about a couple different types of topics. I've got a large list of them, but some of the key ones looking for are some really broadly applicable game design talks, things that kind of apply to anybody who's doing game development, maybe a solo or small team, and needs to understand game design better, be better at it, and talks on code architecture and more advanced code and bigger projects type stuff. Outside of that, we're also looking for some stuff on the new UI system, and I think that's about it. There are lots of other ones that I think I've got a list of like 20 topics that we're looking for speakers on, but those are the ones where like really, really want some people. So yeah, please submit one, and yeah, we'll talk soon. Yeah, I think there's a link in the description. If there isn't, I sent one out in email, and I will drop it into the description after the show. And Michael asked in chat, any chance you can add another ticket tier for poor game devs? Yes, I think we're going to have a low price ticket, like a student or indie tier ticket that's probably around $100 or less and comes with a bunch of free stuff. And then we'll have a pro one that has a couple other things. But we're going to make sure that we have some low cost stuff. But we're also, I don't think I've announced this yet, and I don't know if I'm supposed to announce or tell about this, but we're also going to have we're probably going to have at least a one free day where people can attend for free and get in on the conference. So if you can't afford to come to all of the conference, at least be able to get into to some of the cool stuff. So we're still working out the details. Don't quote me on that. Again, not sure if I was supposed to say that out loud, but I already did, so it's a little bit too late. But anyway, Johnny,
it's your show.
Welcome, and yeah, thanks for being here. And you're here last week and had some really cool stuff from CES. I'm hoping you got a couple more things, but I think we got a lot to talk about. Before we do, though, if you haven't already subscribed to Johnny's channel, I linked it in the description, and I'm going to drop it in chat as well, so everybody can go subscribe and check it out. You want to tell everybody what it is you talk about on your channel real quick before we get going?
Yeah. So my channel, it's definitely kind of focused around game development. Definitely get into a lot of Unity stuff. Lately, most of the stuff that I've been doing has been related to Unity's data-oriented technology stack. So, I like to do a lot of tutorials, and then, hopefully soon, I have some things kind of built out, but hopefully soon I want to start doing some more kind of like showcase videos where I'm like showing, all the cool and interesting things that you can do with dots, and show, why this technology is super important. So, just putting that out there. So I actually get around to, editing these videos that I've been kind of having in the works for a little while now.
Nice. So you're going to start doing some more videos, just kind of showing off the end results and the power of dots, not just the tutorials on how to do it, but on this
exactly.
is why you're going to do it as well. I think that's extremely valuable. And those videos tend to be even more popular to you.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's just something that can kind of have like a little bit more of like a broad appeal, and kind of like give people a better idea about why they might want to look into dots to begin with.
Yeah, get them kind of started and get that motivation. And it's one of those things that you don't necessarily have to already be in dots and already like solving a problem or at a specific point. You just have to be kind of curious to be interested in the video. So I think those will be really good and interesting. And what kind of stuff are you planning on showing there? Do you have anything in mind? Is it like specific games or specific features, or just crazy scalability, or is it all secret?
Well, I guess
I
could spoil the idea. The first one that I have, I've kind of like built the project out and have most of it recorded, and just kind of need to, put together a whole video. But I basically recreated Flappy Bird using 10,000 birds. So so I think it's just going to be like a fun, cool little showcase. I think that kind of the premise of the video is going to be like, you know, how it's kind of more of like a design problem. Like, how do I actually make Flappy Bird interesting with 10,000 birds? And so I kind of like go through a little bit of a process of like trying to like figure that out. So yeah.
Well, and then you've still got to make it work and not fall apart. And I assume that was another interesting challenge doing that in with dots. I mean, it probably quite a bit easier with dots. I can't imagine
Yeah, it actually was
dropping
not too
10,000
bad,
game
but yeah.
objects and birds in there.
Yeah.
Nice. That sounds pretty cool. Pretty interesting. So, do you have a preference on where we start today? Do you want to talk about layoffs or do you want to talk about CES?
Yeah, I mean, we can start probably with the Unity stuff just because that's probably like the most relevant kind of news and everything. So I guess we can kind of get into that first.
Okay, so there was an announcement earlier this week. I think it was like 2 days ago. That they had another set of layoffs at Unity. It looked like it was just under, or just over 300 people. I've lost track now. I should have the numbers right in front of me, but I rebooted and lost all my tabs, so I don't. But it looked
Happens.
like it was about 400, and I think we were talking about this a little bit before we started. I thought I had read that they were looking at rehiring those or most of those people though, that the article that I clicked on had it linked to another one saying they were looking at
Yeah,
rehiring,
so I
but I'm
I
not
just
sure.
kind of dropped a link to a YouTube video in our chat, which you can kind of share off with everybody. It's from Mike here at Games from Scratch. um, he basically did the kind of a whole video on the situation, just kind of like giving a little bit of a background on kind of some of the previous layoffs and some of the recent layoffs. So kind of the previous layoffs that happened a couple months ago, it sounds like kind of like you're mentioning, a lot of them got rehired. It sounds like about 75%. I think that may be where you were kind of getting that number from. Um, Basically got rehired into different positions in the organization. So it was kind of like a restructuring there. With this more recent, round of layoffs and all that, it sounds like basically this is just a couple months after they did the merger with Iron Source, so they potentially have a lot of jobs that are kind of like redundant, kind of more on the admin side. You think of like the kind of financial people or IT and stuff like that. So it seems like that's kind of where most of these layoffs were coming from, is the kind of more admin side. And it seems like kind of more of those kind of like redundant jobs from that big merger that happened a couple
From
months ago.
combining the two companies.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't really know anything about the details on it, so I'm glad. I mean, I looked a tiny little bit this morning. I just saw it, and uh, beyond that, I didn't really know much. So that's interesting to know. I guess it's not bad. I wasn't too worried about it when I saw it because the numbers were. I mean, it sucks to get laid off, but they were relatively small. It wasn't like what I was telling you about earlier when I started my first game dev job and came in, and they literally within 3 weeks after I started laid off more than half the company. It was a little. I think it was about probably 55-60% of the company. It looked like
Mm.
got laid off, including myself. Like 3 weeks into the job, like I went in there, moved down, moved in, got ready, started my job, and then end of week
You're like,
three, they're like, "Yep,
well,
everybody come in here. We're gonna have a meeting outside real quick, and yep, come back Monday, see if you have a job." Nope, you don't. So,
and you ended up getting rehired to a different position in that company. Is that right?
yes. So that one, I'd gotten in there, like I said, literally 3 weeks after I started, I got laid off. But while the layoffs were going, one of the guys in charge that I had been talking to quite a bit and doing a good amount of stuff for, said, "Hey, you are getting laid off now. You're going to get the severance package, but if you want to stay around here, I think we're going to rehire you back into a different role, an even better one. So, we just have to get this done." And then that happened. And it was supposed to be like 2 or 3 weeks. It ended up being about 6 weeks. So I moved back, and then they finally called. They're like, "Yep, hey, we still want to do that." And went down there. And it was in that case, it was also a bit of redundancy because at the time I was working in the QA department doing all the testing and some tools for testing. So I was doing testing, but in all of my spare time, I was just building tools to make the testing easier and building a little bit of tools for the designers because there really wasn't a whole lot of work. So when I started work, I got into work. The day that I started was the first day of my manager's 3-week vacation.
Oh, wow.
So he was actually gone the entire time I worked there. He was on vacation and like came back like at the end of the layoffs. So it was,
And just after everything blown
yeah.
up.
So I mean, I had work to do, but I spent all of my spare time building these things, and then they essentially gave me a job doing the tools development part of the layoffs. The QA team didn't need to move over because they had a much bigger QA team because they did layoffs with a merger. So there was like a merger or a company buyout, and then layoffs because of it, and yeah, same kind of thing. So it was interesting. It was not on EverQuest 2. Somebody asked. That was on Vanguard. That was slightly before EverQuest 2. Then they brought in to Sony there. It was fun stuff. It was a scary, crazy nightmare, but it worked out pretty well in the end for me, at least. So I've totally lost track of where we were. Anyway, yeah, layoffs suck. Hopefully they weren't
Yeah,
too
definitely.
impactful.
Yeah, it sounds like there is somebody in the chat who may have been affected by some of these layoffs. Not sure if it was from the recent ones or some of the previous ones, but it sounds like they said that Unity has been super supportive of trying to find another team. So that's great to hear. Yeah, definitely. Sucks to lose a job, and kind of when things are kind of a little bit in limbo, can be definitely a scary thing. But glad to hear that you have some support for finding your next thing.
Yeah, I found in tech places, at least most of the time, most people are like super helpful and supportive. And like if they know somebody who's been laid off, a lot of the time they're reaching out to them and just saying, "Hey, are you looking for something?" Or "Can I share your stuff?" Or "Hey, I know some people that were laid off. Do you know things?" I had generally seen that. Like usually people that I've seen get laid off at tech companies have something kind of lined up by the next week. I'm sure it's not everybody, but
Yeah,
most of the time
definitely. And
it's like
it's like
some
kind
friend
of one
has
of those
threatened.
things. It's like you didn't like lose your job because you did a bad job. I mean, that decision kind of came from up high, a high level business decision. And then, you still have plenty of managers down the chain who, maybe were, kind of familiar with your work and who are like, more than happy to vouch for you to get your next thing. Because again, it's kind of out of their control as well that you were let go.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've seen. People tend to be very, very helpful there. And I saw it wasn't so we're talking about the Unity layoff, and that was relatively small compared to like that Microsoft one. Did you see that?
Oh yeah.
Like 10,000
Yeah.
people? That's a
Yeah,
much bigger
that's
one, yeah.
crazy. And yeah, a lot of those people were in I know kind of some of their games divisions and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely a tough one.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everybody doesn't have too hard of a time finding a new job or find something even better. And that's kind of what I recommend. Like start looking for something and start looking for something that's a step up. Like take the opportunity to
Yeah,
get a
yeah,
better
totally.
position or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually talking was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday to my daughter and her boyfriend about jobs and that entire process. And one of the things that I was recommending to him, and I think I don't know if I've recommended it to people before, but I probably should have to everybody, is that when you go to an interview or after the interview, unless they've told you like, "Hey, we hate you, go away," you should always send them an email, like send them something thanking them for the interview and telling them how excited you are about whatever it is you can say about their company. Just getting that extra little touch and that extra little point of contact, I think it's super valuable, and it's something that I always do, and I
Oh yeah.
recommend
Yeah,
people do as
absolutely.
well.
That I've had really good success with that, especially if there's like maybe some times during the interview where I couldn't think of a good response off the top of my head. Maybe just like 10, 15 minutes after the interview, maybe just kind of like think about that a little bit and then go, "Oh, actually like I do kind of have a better answer for this." And um I not necessarily like frame it that way, but you just kind of go like, "Oh, you asked me that question, and after the interview, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I feel like I didn't have that good of a response, but thinking about it a little bit more, maybe this, and this about that." So I think that's just another thing to leave a good impression about yourself on the interview, and just like to show that you're kind of like actually really considering about the problem even after that like one moment where they asked it.
Yeah, and that you're gonna go kind of solve the problems afterwards when you actually have to do the job, right? Like, because in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
real
yeah,
world, you're
totally.
gonna
Yeah,
come up with a solution in a meeting, and then you can either implement that or you can go look it up and see like, what should I really do and come up with the best thing.
yeah.
And yeah, I that's actually the exact same thing that I did to salvage an interview at Qualcomm. I forget what it was. There was some question, some algorithm question that I just totally screwed up, and I don't remember what it was. And then within an hour, I'd email them back like, "Here's did a little bit of looking into it. This is probably what I actually do in a real scenario. And then this is like the most optimal, like if I needed to, show off fancy code version of it. Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
this is probably the line that I would use. Um, yeah, I remember in that interview, one of the questions they asked me was like, say you had a list of things, a list of, I forget what it was, and there was some ordering, and I was like, well, I would do dot sort dot order by and put it in my fucking lambda because that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna write a sorting algorithm myself to go find something. They're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Interviews. It's been a while, but they're interesting for sure.
Fun times.
Oh, okay. Anyway, do you want to talk about any other layoff stuff, or should we talk a little bit about tech and CES?
I don't really have much more on the layoff stuff particularly, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have much else, but if anybody in chat does too, feel free to chat away and
Sound
ask
off.
questions or let us know. Unity seems to not have good intentions. Not sure on their acquisitions recently, but they mean what? I'm not sure. Oh, Unity seems to have good intentions. It says. Got it. I read that totally wrong. Not sure on some of their acquisitions. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, Unity just wants to grow and be in more stuff. That's kind of what I've seen. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure
and
it
at
varies from
Unite
person to
this year,
person.
the whole thing was like very games focused. They weren't really, touching too much on some of the other industry stuff, but yeah, just really focusing on core games a lot.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how the AI stuff's going to tie into the future of that too, though. I think
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know,
totally.
it's feeling really weird with all the stuff that's coming out now. Somebody asked in chat, so my mouse isn't moving, so I can't click on it. But what are your opinions on mic-based games? Have you played a microphone-based game?
Um,
I haven't.
on the Nintendo DS.
On what?
The Nintendo DS.
Oh,
Remember
okay.
those kind of like some of the old things where you could like, blow into the microphone and it would like, have something go. I think that's probably the closest that I've used to do a mic to playing a mic based game, I guess.
Yeah, I can't think of one
That
that
was the first thing that came to mind.
I played. Donkey Kong Jungle Beats. There you go. Yeah, I guess. Oh yeah,
Nice.
right. The Rockstar games. I have played those ones, like the singing ones.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah, of
not that
course.
I'm
Yeah.
singing, but I played those at least. Oh, we got a super chat. Love your channel. Learn tons from you. Do you do any small paid consulting? Not really anymore. I just don't have the time for it. I wish I did, but I got too many kids and too many things to do to find time for it. But I can definitely refer you to somebody who does do some paid consulting. Also, if anybody is looking for paid consulting opportunities, just shoot me an email. It's just jason@game.courses. I've got quite a few that come in, like probably one or two a week. People are looking for somebody to do contract work, and if you're good and can show off your stuff and show that to me, then I'd be happy to get you in contact with the right people. So, yep, we got people trying to enter the giveaway that's not running right now. Good stuff. So, I guess tech stuff. We got CES just happened, and GDC is coming relatively soon. I'm kind of excited to see the tech that comes along at GDC because it'll be all
Yeah, yeah,
game
yeah.
dev focused. But was there any like other cool tech that we didn't really talk about last week, or that we talked about last week, and you want to dive into a little bit more that you saw at CES?
I think last time we went over a lot of the big stuff, but there's just, some other small, random little cool things that I saw there. So definitely some interesting display tech. So there a couple companies were showing off wireless displays, just like completely wireless. Like some of them were battery powered, some of them basically just required a power cable. But then there was like a kind of like controller box that it came with that you could like plug your HDMI inputs into.
Okay,
So
well
that was
that's
kind of
like
an interesting
the
thing.
Samsung frame ones are like that. They're just like a little tiny cable. Um, but they've been like that for like 5 years now.
Okay, but it's all like the inputs like wireless and everything though.
No, those just go to a box that's somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
No.
Because yeah, so yeah, I know. I think yeah, LG was showing off like a wireless one where basically there's just a power cable that plugs in, and then there's like a separate box that you can kind of hide away to like plug in your PlayStation or whatever, and then that
Oh.
is like a wireless transmission with the TV.
Oh, okay. I'm not
Yeah,
sure that adds much value. if
yeah,
you still have
no,
to, if
it's
you still have to run a cable to it, like you still got
yeah.
to run a cable to
Although
it.
there was another company, I don't remember who, but they had it's like a yeah again wireless display, but it had hot swappable batteries in it.
Yeah, that one seemed unique and definitely
Yeah,
different. But I'm not sure where you would use it. I mean, I'm sure there's some scenarios for it, but it seems like a very specific, strange use case, right?
right.
Like
Yeah,
you're gonna,
they have it like floating in the middle of a room or something, or I don't know.
yeah. I feel like it's one of those things that they'll use at a couple of conventions or something, but probably not become a normal thing because the pain in the ass of
Yeah.
changing
Oh, I
batteries
gotta
is
change the batteries on my TV.
yeah, I gotta charge the batteries and gotta go replace the batteries in a couple of years or 2 years
Yeah,
because they've been
yeah.
charged so much. I feel like it's definitely like a corporate thing. Did you see anything that the like average random nerd's gonna buy?
Um, I saw something kind of interesting that you might find interesting talking about display tech as well. But there was like a monitor that you could basically it had handles on the side, and you could grab them and turn it into a curved display, or you can push them back and turn it back into a flat display.
Oh, okay.
So it's like kind of like both. You could have either a curved or a flat display, but it was like the same thing. Like you could just like fold it and back.
Yeah, just bends in and out.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was kind of interesting. Um,
What about with VR and AR stuff? Was there anything new there? I remember at GDC, like one of the coolest things that I saw was that Tilt 5 augmented reality
oh
table
yeah,
that
yeah,
I'd
yeah, yeah,
never seen
yeah.
it before, and I was like, "Oh, this thing is freaking crazy." I have one out in my office set up, and I mean, I got this portrait hologram thing. It's freaking crazy, cool little tech too. But did you see anything like that? That's just like totally different, or
I think I might
something
have
I
talked
haven't
about
even
it.
thought
I
of?
think I might have talked about it last time, but the 3D displays that Sony had, they're kind of like the way they were showcasing them. It was just like sitting at like a 45-degree angle like that, and there was like a little camera on top, and the camera basically tracked your eyes essentially. And then so like wherever you would kind of like move your head, it would like know how to display the 3D image to you. But it was like really cool because you could kind of like look down at like a lower angle, and then you would actually kind of like get a different perspective on like the scene that they were showcasing. So like
Oh,
for
nice.
example, like the one that they were showing off, it was like a soccer game, and then the people were like kind of like running around on the field and everything. But then if you kind of like duck down, you could like get a different angle, and you could like actually see out into the crowd.
Oh, cool. So this was it like a normal screen then, just like a regular OLED screen,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
was
yeah,
it
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
And
You didn't
then
have to
the
wear
angle
glasses or
just changed
anything, and
based off. So then it's just limited to one person at that time, I
yeah,
assume.
yeah, just one person. Yeah,
Okay. I mean, it's still very cool. I mean, most of the time one person's using the screen.
yeah, yeah.
To be fair, unless the screen's big, it's very rarely shared. So interesting. Oh, that's a cool
Yeah.
one. Anything else?
Let's see. There was people were showing off some kind of like holographic things as well. Like there was this one that's like this kind of like big, I guess it's to be used kind of like for like signage for events or something like that. But they had this like, really big, probably like 50 plus foot tall like holographic display. Basically the way that it works is there are kind of these like fans basically. And then on the fan blades are like LED strips that can like basically like as they're spinning, they can like change the pixels or whatever to make these like kind of holographic figures or whatever.
Oh, crazy! So they're like giant fans, or is it like a bunch of little fans?
Yeah. So the big one, like it was probably like, or maybe like 4 feet across in total, like the fans. Yeah. And it
Oh,
was
okay.
basically just like a kind of like a cross like that. And then they were just, yeah, spinning around. So
Oh,
pretty
wow.
decently
Okay.
sized. Yeah.
Did you get one of those?
No. They had some smaller ones too. And even there was like a company that was just selling like an individual, like a single one that you could like put inside like your computer case or something like that to have it, display little things.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That sounds more like something I would actually get. Something that
Yeah.
fits in there. How do
Yeah.
you know how much those were? Are they reasonably priced? Or are they still like thousands of dollars or
I
hundreds of
think they
dollars?
were maybe like around 100-ish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're,
I'm
they're
pretty
they're
sure that
attainable.
they didn't have any like for sale that day, but you could like put your email down for like a pre-order or something like that.
Oh, okay. That sounds pretty cool. Hey, anything
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
wasn't display tech that you ran into?
Um, I think so that company that I think you got some of the remember those like electronic dice that you got where you could
Yes, the
like roll the
Go
dice and you
dice.
get
I
the
have
app.
them around here somewhere.
Yeah,
They're in
so
the other
they
room
were
here.
there. They had some of those, and they also had a like a Rubik's cube that could attach to an app, so
I've
you could
got.
like solve the Rubik's cube, and it would tell you like how quickly you solved it and where you messed up or things like that. So yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I've got actually both of those. They're pretty cool. The cube, I got from a kid that loves cubes and has been trying to figure out how to do it forever. So now he can actually like see step by step. I've taught him a couple times, but I feel like it's just a fun way to learn. But also the dice, I thought those were super cool. Like trying to figure out like you roll them and they show up in the app and stuff. But with the problem that I ran into with them that drove me nuts was the getting them to work in Windows was nearly impossible. They work fine on
Uh,
Android, on a Mac, on iOS, but the SDK and example stuff didn't work in Windows, and I didn't want to go through the pain of doing an Android deployment when I really just wanted to screw
yeah.
around with them in the Unity editor. And I want to roll them, have them pop up, and show up in my battler and stuff without me having to do a build and all that stuff. So,
Yeah, no, that would be
but other
so
than that,
cool
they're
if you
super
could
cool.
you could integrate those with like the Tilt 5. Like you could just like roll the dice and then your character just starts moving right
That
away,
was exactly what I wanted to
right?
do. I wanted to set up the dice with the thing so you could roll and your character would move. But I was like, oh, yeah.
That's
I don't
that's
want
that's the
to.
future right there. That's
If
the
I could do
future.
it in Unity without having to do a build, I would have done it. I may still end up doing it. It's probably a good idea and probably something I'll end up putting together. What the hell? I'll do it. It just sounds fun now. I forgot how much fun it sounded like doing that project.
All right.
Cool. Well, I don't know if you had any other cool CES stuff you want to talk about.
Yeah, a couple other random things. Razer was showing something kind of interesting. It was basically like a portable gaming device. Like it looked basically just kind of like a phone with like some controllers that you stick onto the side. But the guy was telling me that it like wasn't a phone, so it was just like kind of its own dedicated device. But you could still like pop the sides off and have that little touchscreen device as is, and you can play mobile games on it and stuff. But it's not a phone somehow.
So it's like a Steam
So
Deck basically, but in a foam form factor.
yeah, it's like basically everything that a phone is except
Just
LTE
without the
connection or whatever.
cellular chip.
Yeah.
Like we took that chip out and it's not a phone.
Yeah.
Interesting. And
So
that
that
was
was
from
there.
Razer. It seems like
Yeah,
everybody's
Razer.
trying to get into the handheld market now. It seems like it's getting big. I don't know if a lot of people are actually buying them. Like I have my Steam Deck, but I've realized I never use it, other than doing deployments onto it for fun. But
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't know. I'm always just a fan of nice big screens. Little screens, just I struggle with them.
Definitely, yeah.
Did you see a lot of those being or shown off there though at CES, or a lot of the handhelds for different game companies?
Yeah, so Pimax was also showing off one, like the VR company, Pimax.
Oh,
So
okay.
they had one where it's basically just kind of same little thing where there's the little tablet thing with the controllers on the side. You could play your game or whatever, but then you can actually pop that tablet out and then slide it into essentially what is like a Google Cardboard kind of nicer version headset. So you can kind of slide it in and have like a kind of a VR headset with that.
Oh, okay. That I was wondering why Pimax is getting it. That seemed like a weird one, but I guess if they're gonna
Yeah.
make it a like a 50-50, and they were like a Vive or Oculus competitor for anybody who's not
Yeah,
familiar with
yeah,
them, right? They
yeah.
just
So
did
I think
higher
their whole
quality.
thing is like having like really wide FOVs. Like you see their headsets and they go like out like super wide.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the case. I had one of their first headsets. I forget if it was the 5K or the 8K one. It did have great field of view, and it looked really good. It was just too heavy, and I at the time was kind of stopping doing VR stuff at the time, so it was
Gotcha.
less excited. It kind of came like at the end of my excitement about VR when I'd already done tons and tons of VR stuff is
Fair
when it
enough.
finally shipped. So
Yeah. Yeah, they were
it's a
showing
cool
off
device.
a new proper headset as well. So I tested that one out. Um, the demo just wasn't that good of an experience for me just because I think kind of like the IPD adjustment was off and I didn't bother to adjust it really. So that was just like kind of a little bit throwing me off a little bit. But it was also this like flight sim demo, which was pretty cool. But the control input was like really bad. So
Oh,
like I was like just trying to make small little adjustments to just like, just kind of like fly, just kind of like, correct the flight a little bit. But it was like wasn't like it wouldn't pick up my movements until I got like super far, and then it would just like immediately turn it's like super quickly. So I'm just like trying to like go like all over the place, and yeah, it was definitely a little bit disorienting, but
flipping and doing a bunch of rolls and stuff.
exactly. I'm just like, no, I'm just trying to just trying to level flight here.
Oh, that's funny. So what's well, on the topic of VR right now, what's the best headset you've tried out so far? Like out of all the ones you or the one that you if you were gonna just have one for yourself to play with, which one would it be?
Um, I don't know. To be honest, like I mean, I got the Quest 2, which I think is just fine for what I need. Just something that I can, throw on a completely wire-free headset. Do some VR experiences that are, in a good enough resolution. And if I need to, I can, plug it into the computer, no problem. So I have that. I unfortunately I didn't get a chance to try out the new Vive that they were showcasing, which is supposed to be pretty cool. Also, they were showing off PSVR 2, but it was super hard to get a demo for that one. That was one that I really wanted to play with as well.
Yeah, the PSVR stuff always, at least when I've seen it, had huge lines to
Yeah,
go back there and see. It seems like you put
yeah,
PlayStation on there and everybody wants to go check it out.
yeah. I think you had to like there was some kind of like sign up process that you had to do, but then like as soon as they opened the sign ups, like they all just like filled out right away. So
Oh, gone.
yeah.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I really want to go next year, so we're gonna have to meet up there or head out there together or something.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
totally.
relatively short drive for me, so I just feel
Yeah, good
bad
point.
that I've missed it every time. So I don't know. I'll get to see some of this stuff at GDC though. They tend to
Yeah,
show
yeah,
off
yeah.
some cool
The
tech there.
GDC is gonna be awesome this year.
Yeah, pretty excited for it myself. I think it should be a lot of fun. There was a question in chat. I don't know if you saw it. Somebody was asking specifically for you, saying that they're hitting a break point in their project soon, and they want to look at using dots. I assume to improve performance. They're probably
Yeah,
hitting
yeah,
a point where
totally.
they need to get the scale up. They said they don't really know where to start, um, where they should start considering dots. 1.0. Like what should they do if you're at the point where like you're getting your game built and you're starting to hit performance problems? Are you Can you just dive in and add a little bit of dots? Are you like doing a full rewrite, or you
Add a little
just
bit of
like
dots.
you just check the dots enabled button and get the boost? Or what
Just
would you
import the
recommend as like
entities
the first?
package, and then yeah, you're all set. No,
Yeah, yeah, right. Hit the fast button.
yeah. I think it would be important to kind of learn where your performance bottlenecks are coming from, and then that would kind of give you some ideas about how you can optimize. So like if you're having, CPU issues or memory issues, you'll be able to solve that using, maybe you'll be able to just use the job system and the burst compiler to, kind of cut those down a little bit. You don't necessarily need to go full into ECS. But yeah, again, depending on your use case, I think that would be a good, at least first place to start, especially if you have a project already built out. See if there's anything that you can utilize the C# job system to do multi-threading, and then the burst compiler to the burst compiler is typically used with the job system. But the burst compiler does a lot of like single instruction, multiple data, SIMD type operations to just really get a whole lot of efficiency. So that would be probably the first two places that I would start looking. Maybe if there is some places that you can utilize entities, that may be, when you kind of want to start looking into actual ECS rather than more just kind of general dots stuff. So,
can you give like a real world, but maybe a simplified example of somewhere you could drop the job system in, like some problem that somebody may have had, or a hypothetical one that they could then, like, how would they go about doing that?
so yeah, the job system, it's definitely good for when you have like calculations where you either need to do a lot of calculations or the calculation is particularly intensive and you don't want to, block up the main thread by doing it. So basically, you can create essentially a job to do that work, and then you can have that run on a worker thread. Now, there are a couple things that you do need to consider when using the job system. So you don't necessarily want to use it for everything because there is going to be some overhead of actually scheduling the job. Like you basically have to essentially create a struct and populate it with the essentially input data that you want to have. And then there is like a little bit of overhead from actually scheduling that job. And then you have to consider, once that job completes, obviously you don't just immediately have the results from it because it was happening on a different thread. So you need to basically later on in the frame check to see if that job has been completed. If it has, you have to obtain the results from it. And then once you have the results from it, you can use it how you need to. So it's, again, not necessarily useful for every single scenario or kind of like the general use cases. But again, if you're running into some situation where you have some, massive CPU bottleneck because of some, computation that you're trying to do, or you're trying to do something a bunch of times, it may be worth looking into.
Okay. So what if we had let's take this example. Let's say I'm building a spaceship game, like flying around in space with a battle, and I got just some simple heat-seeking missiles, but I got tens of thousands of them now are flying around because the battle got big. Is that something I would push over to the job system, or we want to go over to entities for that, or some sort of mix in between, or not at all?
Yeah, for that, I mean, it is possible that you could say utilize entities to basically do kind of like all that calculation of determining where
Like
those
the heat
heat-seeking
seeking or
missiles,
something,
like,
right?
yeah,
It's like
where they
turning.
need to be pointing, where they should be moving, and things like that. And then a lot of times, you can integrate just regular game objects for kind of all your front end stuff because there's a number of things that you can't necessarily do with full ECS right now when it comes to things like, particle systems, things like that. So if you want to kind of have any of that, you are going to be needing to have some game objects basically mirroring the position of those entities anyhow. So that could be kind of something to look into. And then, yeah, it's kind of up to you to determine if you want to use, kind of the ECS physics system to do any of your collision detection, or, somehow kind of integrate with the game object physics system.
Oh, okay. So you would probably then go with like the job system and ECS physics for something like that. I
Yeah, if
assume.
you're doing, yeah, again, like kind of a big scale, 10,000 heat-seeking missiles, I'd say probably the best course to go about that would be using ECS for, again, kind of all the logic about determining about where all those heat-seeking missiles need to be pointing and everything like that, and actually moving them, doing the translations of them. This is something that you probably could do with the job system, but again, it gets a little bit more complicated because you have to, again, populate those input jobs with all that data. And then, once you get the results from them, then you have to, assign them back to those game objects. And so there can be, a little bit of complexity and, again, a good amount of overhead with doing it that way. Whereas the alternative, again, would be to basically do all the computation of that with ECS. And then, at some point, you basically just synchronize the visual representation, which is probably a game object, with that ECS entity representation of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. So since we've got so many of the things, it kind of makes more sense to actually represent them with an entity. And then, so what would be like a good scenario for just the job system where you wouldn't go for an entity? Would it be something like maybe like some economy game where you've got, 100 things acting on the economy, but they're all doing some complex stuff and you find that it's getting slow if they try to figure out their thing each tick? Or would it be, or is there some other kind of like, you're just running some processing of some other specific thing? I mean, are you going to add the job system for a specific boss battle that is super CPU intensive? I assume not, but like, yeah, do you have some other just interesting examples?
Well, yeah, actually, I'll shout out to Wayne Games in the chat. By the way, Wayne Games also has a lot of good dots content on YouTube, so he'd be definitely another good resource to check out if you're interested in kind of learning these things. But yeah, like he says right here, if you have lots of stuff, use ECS. If you have heavy calculations like pathfinding or AI stuff, jobs and bursts might be enough. So yeah,
Nice.
again, it's kind of the more calculation side of things rather than I guess large numbers of dynamic entities. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that kind of says it perfectly and explains it. Because I think it's confusing for people a lot of time. They're like, "Well, what's the difference?" One's kind of a subset and part of the other, and people get a little bit, or they're not really part of another, but they're part of dots, and they just get a little bit lost, including myself sometimes. So it's definitely definitely helpful. Cool. So, do you want to take some questions from chat? We've got, I think, quite a few other ones. Or was there
Yeah,
anything else
absolutely.
if there's anything else from CES you want to talk about? I mean, feel free. We can jump into it.
Let's see, a lot of drones. There was like a a big drone that was like actually like you could have a person sit in. So there's
Oh, and
that.
fly them around with a remote control.
No, no, I think there's a controls inside there.
Oh, okay.
Um, see, they were also showing a
I'm
flying
flying the
car.
kids over to you, babe. I could see my wife doing
All
that.
right.
Here comes a baby. I'm gonna fly him over.
Yeah, they're showing let's see, a flying car. Yeah, I think those are kind of pretty much the main things.
Oh, okay. Flying cars and flying drones for your babies, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So let's see. Let's take a couple of these questions then. I'm gonna go back through some of the previous ones, but there's one right here about dots. So let's just pop that up first. It says, thanks so much. My issues are navigation and AI bottlenecking
Nice.
with CPU. Will your older videos on jobs and burst work with 1.0, or is there a specific one you recommend?
Yeah, for jobs and burst, the interfaces haven't changed too much. It's been definitely a while since I've done a video just on like the proper job system and burst compiler. So that's probably something that I should revisit at some point. But yeah, if you want to go check out my older videos, I think they would still be mostly relevant. I think I do have some specifically on just the job system. So that would be maybe a good one to look into.
That's nice. So they're not doing these huge breaking changes constantly anymore, I assume, now that we're at a 1.0. And even from 0.5
Well,
was a huge
even
jump?
well, even just with the job system and burst compiler, that stuff has been locked in for a while because that stuff has been considered production ready for quite a while. Like yeah,
Yeah, I guess it's just entities that recently hit the 1.0, right?
yeah. And So technically they're in like the 1.0 pre-release right now, and then so sometime this year, probably within the next couple months or so, then it's going to be the fully, I guess what they call it, production ready 1.0.
Oh, nice. So yeah, you can start using it. Start using those videos. If you have some specific ones too, we can just link those in the description or drop them in chat or both. Make sure that people can go find them. And there was another question about ECS and geometry, and you kind of mentioned the dots physics system. Is that faster, slower, or about the same as the normal Unity physics system?
So it works a little bit differently in that it's a what they call a stateless physics system. So it doesn't have, like, objects don't have states, so you don't necessarily for free get like a on collision enter or on collision exit, things like that. But there are kind of like collision events that you can sort of listen to. Um, and I don't know, the physics system is a little bit weird, but it is pretty performant. So it works pretty well in that sense. But as far as like talking about like geometry, if you want to do any kind of like mesh creation and things like that, I do know of some people who have been using ECS to create like voxel type worlds. So they can kind of do all the procedural generation, mesh calculation, and all that stuff with ECS. So that's definitely cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't played with it at all. So now I feel like I'm way out of date on this. We got to do like a little dots boot camp for Jason's.
Little powwow.
Yeah, so to do like a little hackathon and build a nice dots game. I think it would be interesting. All right, let's go through a couple more. I scrolled up and found a couple other questions that came in. This one was from somebody who was a software developer for 3 years, and they're wondering if they can get a job in the game dev industry. If you're a software developer, you should be able to get a game programming job. I'd say not as easy as being a game programmer and getting a normal software developer job. I think that's slightly easier, but it's not difficult or impossible by any means. You got to look for the positions, apply for them, and look for tools positions as well, because a lot of the software stuff that's outside of game development is very similar to the tool development. A lot of the same stacks. You're using web stacks or sometimes Windows stuff, but a lot of time some web stacks for a lot of the internal tools. So yeah, I'd say definitely can. Don't even need 3 years of experience necessarily.
Yeah, and I'd totally agree with you on that point about looking for tool development position jobs. I feel like that seems like such a great way to get into the games industry, especially on the like software engineering side. Like if you go on job boards, there's always like a lot of openings for tool developers at like many high level companies.
Yeah, I was looking at game dev jobs last night actually, because like I said, I was looking through resumes and helping my daughter out, and there are quite a few of them, even locally around where I'm at. There's quite a few, or at least in the San Diego and LA area, not exactly where I'm at,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but pretty
totally.
close. There's quite a few, and a lot of the companies had a lot of positions. But you do need to go to the specific game developer pages. Is what I would recommend. Don't just go to job recruiting sites. Go straight to the company's page for all of the companies that you're interested in, and you
Yeah.
can search. Just do a Google Map search and find all the companies around you that do the thing, and then go to each of their pages and start applying. But also make sure that you tailor your resume and your cover letter to that position. And if you don't know how to write a cover letter, have Chat GPT write it for you. I actually reviewed one, and I was looking at it. It was last night. I was looking at a cover letter. I was like, yeah, check this out. Here I was like, I was like, maybe I would add like one line, but this is pretty good. And it's like, yeah, Chat GPT wrote it for me. I was like, that explains it. Oh, this is yeah, pretty good. I was like struggling to find advice to give on it. Oh, like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Just like
yeah.
because you tell it the job description and it writes you a great cover letter for that job description. So definitely something that's possible. Here's another dots related question. Are there any good Unity tools that provide user friendly front ends to working with dots? And they did redo a lot of the tooling around this, right? It's not nearly as difficult as it used to be. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I know that Unity is like they definitely want to make dots more accessible to more people at some point. Right now, it's kind of their primary goal that they've, kind of built out this whole tool set and API, whatever you call it. And they, again, kind of want to get it out to the people who, have these specific needs for these specific problems, who are experienced Unity developers already, who are kind of already running into the limitations of, what Unity has to offer out of the box. But I know that they would like to get to the point where you can, use dots maybe without even realizing it. Basically just because Unity is taking care of a lot of those efficiencies kind of on the back end. And they've kind of started to step towards this a little bit more as, with a lot of the newer APIs, it takes advantage of code generation. So, a lot of the code that you have to write in dots nowadays isn't as complex as it was maybe in the earlier stages. But because that code generation, it is kind of generating out that, kind of more complex, a little bit lower level code that is, a lot more verbose. But it's getting easier and easier to write. And yeah, I would assume that's just going to be, keep going in that direction.
Yeah, that was kind of my expectation too. And I think I did a little video about this last week or the week before, because there was that caller was on that got to hear John Riccatello talk about that a little bit. He was talking about, dots and how excited and, happy and proud he was of the dot setup and what
Yeah,
people have been
totally.
doing with it. And then mentioning that he expected some of those, benefits to start, coming into regular developers, which is exactly what's happened. I think it's happening, and that's kind of what I expected would happen long term. So I'm just excited to see that they kind of have the same vision. I'm not sure exactly how that's all going to line up, but I assume things just keep getting faster and faster. That's my hope, at least. But yeah, Yora, I mentioned in
Yeah.
chat
Shout out
doing
Yori.
10,000 colliders at 165 frames a second. That's yeah, definitely more than you can do with the current stuff, or with the old stuff, not current. That's very cool. Let's see. Oh, I got a comment in chat. Chat GPT found a bug in my code and won the argument, so I'd actually believe it was right and fix it. That is so. If anybody is watching and hasn't played with the Chat GPT stuff yet, like, just go try it out. Pause right now and go play with it or something, because it's very, very cool. You can just drop in whatever you want and have it give you back feedback. Have you give you back feedback on your code, tell you that what's wrong with it, why it's doing a thing, or what it looks like it's doing. Have it do the same on a resume. It'll give you back feedback, specific feedback on the different parts, on what things you need to work on if you need to work on them. Or it might tell you that your resume is great. It's funny. I dropped in my daughter's resume after she worked on it and prepared it to show it to me, and it popped back. Hey, this is actually a really great resume. And it had almost no advice. But when I looked at it, I actually
It's like,
looked
yeah,
at it
you're
and I was
good.
like, this is better than most resumes I see, like professional ones. Like,
Dang.
what the hell? But apparently she was preparing it for me, like getting ready, and spent a lot of time and did a very good job. I was pretty impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, GPT is great. I've still just kind of been using it mostly as like a learning tool, just to kind of like, ask it questions about things. And again, I really like that it just kind of has that like full context of the conversation. And I can just have it open. I can be kind of like working on things for a while. And then if I kind of run into another problem again, I can kind of, maybe go back and ask it some more things. And it's just kind of always there and available. I find that it does pretty well with like theory about things. Like, say
Mhm.
like, okay, give me a couple of options about how I might be able to, approach this problem. And, like what are some pros and cons of these different implementations? I think it's worked really well with that. Um, Definitely as you start to get into some of the more like uncommon things, the code doesn't hold up as well, unfortunately. And it doesn't really, understand the code per se. So you can like, there's been some times where I say like, no, this is wrong. I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. And then it says like, oh, my apologies about the error in my previous response, and then it just like generates the same block of code again. I'm like, no.
Oh, that's fine. I haven't had that problem. I have told it to fix things and it fixed them before. I haven't had it regenerate the same thing, but I did see that as the code gets more complex, it's definitely not quite there yet. But I mean, it's probably just a few versions away is my
Yeah,
expectation now.
yeah.
I've been using it a lot for little functions, little math things that I forget how to do regularly that I would
Oh yeah,
normally
yeah,
go
yeah. I'm
Google,
sure it'd be great for those
or
kinds of things. Yeah.
yeah, ideas too. That's the other thing. Like, hey, I need 3 enemy ideas, or give me 5 enemy ideas for this thing, and it pops them out like that. Seems like just like it's kind of like being able to brainstorm without having another when I don't have another person there to talk to. Yeah. Ideally,
Yeah.
like I like to talk to a game designer and go through all this stuff. But if I don't have that option, I can just sit in there and type, say, hey, give me some ideas, and then pick some of the coolest and best ones there. And it's not very opinionated. I can just ask it for different ideas and say, hey, those ideas suck, and it's not going to get
Yeah,
mad.
yeah.
Give me brand new ones. So I've been really enjoying using that thing. Oh, looks like Jeff in chat used it to generate a shader, and it spit out pages of code and then apologized because eventually it gave up and apologized because it was nonsense. Yeah, I've never tried to have it write shader code. Like I said, I do like small things, little functions, little math things and stuff like that, or paste some code and say, hey, what does this do? And that would be kind of interesting. Oh, one other thing that it does relatively well is write tests. So you can give it a method and say,
Oh,
hey, write unit tests for this code, and it will write you the tests to
that
test the
seems like
different
a
scenarios
very
for.
useful thing.
That one I thought was pretty
The
cool.
worst part about writing unit tests is actually writing the unit tests. Like, coming up with them is not necessarily too difficult, but just like if you had some way to like automate that and then you could just drop them in, that
Yeah.
would be.
And it seems pretty good at that. And I'm really wondering like when somebody is just going to build a tool though that takes
Yeah.
your
Oh yeah.
project, looks at it, and then automates writing a bunch of unit tests for the entire project, and it just like runs I don't know exactly what that process would look like, but I can see it as a
To do some
new
code
tool and product
analysis
creation.
and then generate some tests for you and then run them. Yeah.
Yeah, I just generate tests and you just check like, yes, this is a good test or a bad test. Like it's testing something I think is valid. Yeah.
There's
I'm
a
not sure exactly how
million
you do
dollar
it, but
idea for any of you in chat right there.
yeah. Just another one of the many companies that will come up out of AI stuff, I'm sure. Well, let's take a couple more questions real quick. We've got here we go. This is one about jobs. I recently started to apply to jobs in the UK, but I just found out probably because of the recession there aren't too many job openings now. Do you have any suggestions? So I'm going to assume that these are game developer or developer jobs because that's all we're really talking about and all we know about. And give a little bit of advice here. And I think the one of the most important things I think people fail with when they're applying to different jobs or trying to get a job is that they'll kind of try to apply for as many jobs as possible instead of doing a very good job applying for a couple of jobs. Like they'll mass send out the same form letter resume thing to 50 or 100 or more places, and then get a couple wasted time interviews where they don't get a job and not really have it not really go anywhere. And I think that it's a lot better to find specific jobs that you're interested in and put in effort on those applications. You need to actually customize your resume to each specific job. It doesn't have to be a complete rewrite, but definitely an edit for each one. And not just an edit where you're swapping out the name, but where you're actually changing the context and making it appeal to them. And you need to do the same with a cover letter, and the summary part of your resume should be talking about the value that you can bring to their company. It's if you can do that, you're going to find it to be a lot easier and not so uh, distressful when you apply for 20 jobs and don't hear anything back, or you apply for 100 and don't hear anything back. It sucks. But if you just apply for 5 in a 2-day period that you actually put in a lot of time and effort onto, or maybe 10. Like really dive, put a lot of effort. And 10 is probably too many. You're really not thinking about those companies, but think about, you want to make them want to hire you specifically. And like I said, after you have an interview, if you get the interview, make sure that you're also reaching out, thanking them. If you screwed up in the interview, make sure that you're reaching out and correcting those things, because you're already like so far along that process. It's way easier to just finish and land that job than it
Yeah,
is to
yeah.
go find another one that just randomly is going to pick you without any fighting. I feel like you've got to kind of fight and push for the jobs, and it's important. You gotta treat it like it really matters, and just push for it really hard. The other thing to do, when you're going in for actual interviews, to get past the recruiters or whatever and into the interview part, is do as much research as you can on the people that are interviewing you. The more you know about them, the more comfortable you're gonna feel, and the more it's likely you're gonna find something where you kind of bond and get along, like something that you have in common that might just happen to come up during the conversation. And it makes it a lot easier if you know the person, know who they are, and have a good understanding. Like what games they've built, what they've worked on, what their company is doing. If you just go in there and you don't really know much about them at all, like, hey, come tell me about your company, who are you, and stuff, they're going to be way less interested. They want somebody that's passionate and really into it. And yeah, I think the job market is probably going to stay relatively competitive, or start getting more and more competitive, at least than it was like in the last 2 years. Um, yeah, as there's a mention, don't be a stalker.
Yeah,
Well,
I was just
at
gonna
least don't
say.
let them know that you're a stalker, right? Don't go like, hey, how's your daughter doing? I saw your wife was on vacation. Yeah, don't let them know that. But if they happen to love the same football team that you love, you can
Yeah, you could like
where,
find a
where
way to kind of work that into the conversation. Like, oh, I was just, watching, this sports team the other day, and it made me think about this thing that's related to this thing that we were talking about.
Yeah, just don't
Um,
make something
eh,
up and pretend that you're like into fishing and you don't know anything about
yeah, yeah,
fishing,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you find
Yeah,
something
make
that,
it like
that
an
you actually
earnest, like
connect
if
on,
you actually have some overlap. Yeah.
yeah, and it could just be something that you both like, the same TV show, and you wear that T-shirt underneath your fancy shirt.
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, it kind of reminds me. I was doing a little bit of research on someone who was interviewing. Who was I was about to go into an interview with, um, or so they were interviewing me, and then I had kind of like looked them up and saw that they lived in like the town next to like where my dad grew up in Oregon.
Oh.
And I was thinking like, oh, I can kind of like have that in my back pocket if it ever comes up, but it didn't like ever come up in conversation. I wasn't going to be like, oh, hey, I saw that you lived in, right. So
Yeah.
it was like one of those things, like it was there, but it just like never came up in the conversation. So I didn't mention it or anything.
Yeah, you gotta wait for them to mention that they live somewhere. They're doing something. Oh, where you live?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah. Or something like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be to that extent. I mean, I've seen a lot where it's just like they like the same video game that you like, or a lot of times like you might not know that they worked on a game that was your favorite game growing up that you played. That they were part of that team and stuff. And if you don't do the research, because they're not the person that's face was on in front of all the media for it, because any game is going to have 100 or more people working on it. You're not going to know that until you start looking into them. So look into them, and you're going to interview with multiple people, so look into the people at the company that you would be working with too. And you also kind of want to know who they are. Also maybe help you decide that you don't want to work there if you find out that they're terrible. But most of the time you find out like, hey, these people worked on these different projects, and they kind of get a much better idea of what the company is like. And the more you know about it, the more you understand it. I think the easier it is to get those positions, and the
Yeah.
more comfortable you feel just talking to them. You know, at
Yeah.
least at
Yeah.
least
And
that's
I
how it works
just,
for me.
yeah. And I just say, in a, you know, potentially flooded job market where there's maybe a recession and a lot of layoffs happening and, not as many people are hiring. I mean, you really got to do what you can to stand out. So again, I think it kind of goes back to, really taking care to, making those cover letters nice. If you can, reach out to somebody directly rather than just like, submitting your resume through a form or something like that, just to kind of, again, make you stand out a little bit better. But of course, it's always kind of good advice to, network, make connections with people, because that's, I feel like, where, most of the jobs kind of come from. Like if you can actually have a conversation with somebody, talk about some of the things that you're good at, that kind of might, spark something in someone's head. Like, oh, hey, I know, this guy is looking for a Unity developer who has experience with this, like, let me put you in touch, kind of thing. And then that's you're already, past the first couple of phases, and then you're like almost already in the interview process.
Oh yeah, and you've got a heads up in the interview process. I feel like
You're not just like you're not just like going in as like a completely random person. Like they have at least some level of familiarity with you, or like, oh, I got a recommendation from this person who I trust, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that goes a long, long way because it's that against nothing is the alternative that everybody else has. And I wanted to recommend something else that I haven't recommended in a long time, but I think it's time again, which is going to local meetups. If you're in the UK or anywhere that has a relatively decent sized game development community, there should be some local meetups that are happening maybe monthly. Sometimes they're bi-weekly. A lot of times there's like monthly meetups though in the bigger cities, and almost I don't know if I've ever gone to a meetup that didn't have people recruiting and trying to hire. Usually there are actual recruiters that are there trying to fill positions professionally. Like they're working trying to hire people and trying to recruit people. So they're very
Yeah,
motivated,
totally.
and they want people that want to show up to those events. So
Yeah,
it makes a big difference if you can show up to those and start talking to people there. I think it helps a lot. So yeah. Okay. Sorry, reading through chat. They've got 2 mobile games finished and some stuff on the Play Store, and they're working on their portfolio, which definitely will help. That
Yeah,
certainly will help.
totally.
But I would highly recommend if there's a meetup, just find out when the next one is. Go to it. I mean, even if you just go there and don't say anything the first time and sit there silently and just eat the pizza, it's still worth it. And then you'll see like the recruiters
Just talk to
pop up.
people. Just talk to people. It's not that bad. Come on.
Yeah, well, and a lot of the times it takes 2 or 3 times before people start opening up and being willing to say more than hi, and then
Yeah.
after that they get better and better.
Yeah.
They start to
No, and then
recognize faces and yeah.
yeah, and a lot of times if you go to a couple of those meetups, you kind of like start to build a little bit of rapport with those people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember, you were showcasing, that little, whatever game last time." And yeah.
Yep. And then they start offering you jobs, and you're like, "What the hell?" But I've seen it. I've seen lots of people get jobs from other people that they just happen to regularly talk to at the meetups. I've also seen, recruiters stand up regularly saying, "I've got 4 positions here and 3 there, and we're trying to fill them. If you got any of this experience, come talk to me, please." It's a very common thing. So, yeah, and talking definitely can be difficult.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree.
definitely. But I'd say, I mean, the kind of crowds who are going to be at like a game developer meetup, they're all great people, and just realize that you kind of are all there with some common things in mind. And if you can just kind of, just go up. I know it takes a little bit of effort, but if you can just kind of, go up to one person or a group of people and just kind of, ask them a simple question. Doesn't need to be anything crazy long and complex, but just kind of like, oh, you've been working on anything interesting lately. That'll kind of open the door up, and then I feel like the conversation just kind of rolls from there. That's at least been my experience.
Yeah, that's been exactly mine too. I mean, going to meetups is what got me to start doing presentations and talks. I probably never would have done YouTube stuff if I hadn't been half guilted into doing a presentation. I was like, fine, I'll do it. I'll try it out. I was terrified the first time though. I remember, and then afterwards, I was like, oh, this is way fucking easier than I thought. I was like, nobody gave me shit. Nobody said anything mean. Nobody booed.
Yeah,
Nobody
like,
threw
oh, that was like a
anything at
super
me.
interesting talk, and then they'd have like like follow-up questions for you, and
Lots
you're
of
like,
people had
oh,
questions. They were all like thanking me afterwards. I was like, what the
you're
I was
like,
like,
"Oh,
oh,
I
this
just
is
kind of
this is
threw
way
that together
different than
last
I
night.
expected. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I was overwhelmed, had no idea what I was doing, and went like way over. I think my hour and a half long talk went for like 3 hours, and I was just babbling on and
Dang.
on. Like, yeah, we gotta go. So yeah, I would recommend that. Now I wanted to pull up this comment in chat too. The Polygot programmer mentioned I see a lot of people asking how to get jobs, and then you ask them if they're applying, they say no. Um, yeah, they always say
I saw
start
some
applying.
post from someone online somewhere that said like, "Oh, I just landed a job in the games industry by doing one simple trick, actually applying to jobs."
Yes, yes. It is kind of following up here too, and saying that a lot of people have imposter syndrome, kind of afraid to apply and not think they're good enough. The interesting part is I have met a lot of programmers who are like that, who think like, "Oh, I couldn't apply for a job." I'm like, "Oh, you can code way like 1,000 times better than I could when I got my first coding job. Like, the way, way, way better, and it's not even freaking close. Like, you could definitely get a job and do the job and have no problem. I mean, I say the same to my 14-year-old son though too. Like I just go, you could definitely do the job. You just gotta know
Yeah.
that you
Well,
can
and
do it.
yeah, and so much about being a good programmer is being a good learner. And like if you're like to the point where you've, learned enough about the Unity game engine where you could make something simple, just because you don't have like all the, crazy in-depth skills that maybe required on this project that you're learning, doesn't mean that you can't acquire those skills as you're developing things out.
Yeah. You learn all this stuff, a lot of it on the job. I say you learn most of the stuff on the job. And the last thing Polly got mentioned that I think is great and kind of lines up with that is you also learn how to do interviews by going to interviews and interviewing, going through that process. One of my biggest recommendations, people that like have some dream job they want to get, is don't go to that interview first. Go to
Yeah, I
other
was gonna say,
interviews
yeah, there's no shame in having a couple throwaway interviews where like, you know that, you might be able to land an interview there and, just kind of get the experience of doing an interview, but like, even if you did get the job offer, you'd probably decline kind of thing. So it's just like
or you just
no
don't think you have
pressure
a chance at getting that job offer, right?
or
You're like,
that.
"Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
this is
yeah.
way outside my league," but you still go do the interview and you'll get better at interviewing.
Yeah.
Or you might end up
Kind of
finding
get an
out like,
idea
"Oh, no,
for
the
like
job description's crap and I actually can do this job," and they hired me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, kinda get an idea of, like, the types of questions that they're gonna ask and those things, and yeah, and
Yeah, well, you'll find that a lot of the times the questions are the same too. It's the questions from one interview, the same at the next interview, or at least some overlap. Hell, I remember at Riot, the questions were the same from one person to the next. Like, oh, next round of people. Oh, here's the same question. Oh, next round. Like, wait, what? So you'll see that a lot because people just, there's not a giant process most of the time for interviewing. It's just people doing whatever it is, coming up with the best thing that they can come up with, which is usually whatever they saw the last time they got interviewed. Right? Oh, let's see. I don't know if there were any other questions. Oh, there's one about MMOs. Let's take this one. Hi, I'm working on an MMORPG. I'm solo, of course. It's a little bit hard, but the question is how to increase users or make SEO for the game. It's an Android install, but crossplay, and how can I earn with the game? That I don't know. I mean, that's much more of a sales and marketing thing. If the game is done and ready, I mean, I guess that
yeah, I
that
mean,
would
of
seem like
of course, there are, a number of strategies that you can do about increasing your user base. Of course, you could go the paid advertising route where you could, kind of, maybe hire a team of people to, create some advertisements for your game and kind of, showcase those ads on YouTube or something like that. Obviously, that's going to be quite expensive, and if you're just starting out as a solo developer, that may not necessarily be really an option for you. So you could do some more like kind of organic marketing strategies where you kind of maybe create your own videos about the game and share those, or just like find ways to encourage or incentivize your existing user base to create content about the game, share it out with people, um, and just kind of grow it a little bit more organically like that. So those are just a couple small little options. You have any kind of thoughts on that?
yeah, I'm a big fan of doing the development online and kind of building up the audience
Yeah,
there,
yeah, yeah,
especially if
yeah,
you're
yeah,
a
yeah.
solo dev and you can kind of stream that and share it. I don't know how like paid stuff. I feel like is very hard to do and not lose a ton of money on. Um,
Yeah.
Especially if you haven't super monetized the game, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah,
There are
and
lots
so
of
that's
people.
probably why it'd be better to start with organic marketing because then you'll kind of like figure out what resonates with people. And then kind of once you have that idea, then you can maybe look into doing some paid marketing and scaling that out more.
Yeah, I just like the idea of doing like that whole live streaming of the development of the whole thing if you can, because then you can build up a user base and generate some income while you're building it, as well as building up the hype around it, and the people that like it as they keep building it will start to share it and talk more about it. So
Yeah,
that's
totally.
I think probably the best advice I have, but I'm not good at advice on how to make a ton of money sharing your MMO. Like, you gotta have a team of people to do that. I feel at least I would need a team of people to do it. Let's see. Oh yeah, and here's another interesting one. So I know a lot of Unity tutorial YouTubers who get lots of job offers because people assume they're doing tutorials, they must be worth hiring. Another great piece of advice: having a hard time getting a job, make a YouTube channel.
Can confirm.
I can definitely confirm that I have to reject job offers consistently because of the YouTube channel, and solely because of the YouTube channel. So yeah, you definitely can do that. It helps. I mean, it does put something out there, like kind of, puts your face out there. Just make sure that you're doing it good. not that it has to be great, but don't do like a terrible video of
I
you
mean, it
like
shows that you're
wash your
passionate
hair and
enough.
stuff first.
Yeah, it shows that you're passionate enough about it to like take that extra effort to, showcase something, because that's, more effort than just making the project. You actually have to like build it out, show it in a way that's, presentable for, YouTube or whatever, and then go through the whole, editing process and all that, and post that up. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable. You'll definitely, it will increase the number of people willing to and wanting to hire you. Do it enough, and then they'll just start reaching out to you constantly. And like I said, anybody looking for contract work, and if you're pretty good, send me your info, and we can talk, and I can send you over to the people who are constantly looking. Happy to do that. So, Johnny, do you have anything else you want to talk about today? Are you ready to wrap it up?
No, not particularly.
All right. Well, I think it's an interesting conversation. Not a whole lot to talk about, but more than enough for me. And got lots of stuff going on in the next week or so. I think in the next episode next week we might have a cool new guest, which would be pretty cool and exciting.
Ooh.
I don't want to spoil it yet because I have not got a confirmation for sure on the date, but I think that would be very exciting. And talking about streaming and developing games, that exactly on target. And then, is there anything else going on in the next week? Just remember, I'm still looking for a couple speakers for GameDev Guild. You can go to, there should be a link down in the description. You also go to gamedevguild.com and see the old site, and then the new one will be up in the next, or I think the new one might even be up, but the new video is not up. But I'm looking for speakers to do stuff on design, game design, and architecture specifically. But also lots of other topics, VR, AR stuff, and anything that's really super actionable for your just day-to-day game developer. Think of like you got a solo developer, they watch this talk, can they use it? If not, then it probably doesn't make sense. If they can, it's something that they can use. They don't have to go hire a team of 10 more people to use, then it probably fits. Like that's kind of the general rule there. And then Michael asked what my email was. It's jason@game.courses, and asked if somebody's looking for audio designer. I don't know if there was anybody recently, but it does come up sometimes. So if that's something you're available for, let me know and I will put you onto the list. Cool. All right. I think that's about it. My mouse is frozen again. Let's see if I can get it back. One of these days, I'm going to figure out what's wrong with my mouse driver. It's not the mouse itself. I've replaced the mouse. It's some freaking driver in Windows that's killing it. Really, what will happen is I'll reinstall Windows and then it'll go away. But cool. Let me see if there's anything else. I'm looking for okay. Just looking through chat, make sure there was no other last second stuff. All right, Johnny, you got anything else?
No, all set here. Don't have any new video today, but hopefully gonna be getting some of those cool ones for you soon. I do have a quick kind of tutorial one that I want to make here, and then yeah, I want to get that Flappy Bird 10,000 out for y'all soon.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I've made Flappy Bird a couple times, but only with one bird ever. So I'm very curious
It's
to see.
weak.
The hell, I could get 10,000 birds. I'm really curious to see what that looks like and how you put that together. So check it out. So if you haven't subscribed to Johnny's channel, make sure that you go subscribe now. It's right at the top of the description. Go check that out. If you haven't subscribed to mine, also do that. Hit the thumbs up button. Go share the video somewhere, and then come back next week. We got some fun, exciting stuff, and actually come back in a couple days because I think I'm gonna have a big announcement on Monday. But
Ooh.
come back soon. All right. See you all later.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks,
see y'all
Jason.
later.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Bye.